All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Legitimate Cybersecurity. Today, Dustin and I are going to talk about something that we've worked with for a long time, and that's the Internet of Things, also known as IoT. I'd say, at least for the last 15 years now, we've seen a pretty dramatic increase in everything being more connected. All of a sudden, everything has an IP address, all of a sudden, it's connecting online. And what started, I'd say, as having roots in, I don't know, the OT sector, right? Which would
Yeah.
be things such as SCADA. SCADA systems are supervisory control and data acquisition. These are things such as the power grid, gas grids, things like that, has then kind of crept into every other part of society, especially the consumer sector, where we now have our thermostats connected, we have our TVs connected, we have our dog collars connected, and everything has an IP address now. And that brings with it a lot of positives, benefits for everyone in the, I'd say, on Earth. But there's also a lot of concerns that come along with that when it comes to cybersecurity. Everything from malign standards, dead standards, and just poor coding practices that come with it. So what we wanted to do today was take some time to discuss the things that everyone should be concerned about. I don't know if concern is the right word, but be aware of as you're putting these things into your house, as
I
you're
like concern.
implementing Alexa. Well, concern's a good one, right?
Yeah.
But especially when it comes to things like doorknobs and locks, things you expect to keep you safe. There's a lot of things you need to be aware of in order to stay safe with those things. So, Dustin, what I wanted to start with was, from your perspective, how do you think IoT has grown over the last 15 years? And what are the big concerns that you see as it's getting just more and more adoption over time?
Yeah, and I think I wrote an article on this 5 or 6 years ago. It's been a really long time. But I wrote an article on, cognitive offloading and how, there's a theory out there that the domestication of dogs specifically, uh, contributed to the human brain being able to grow the Homo sapiens brains being able to grow beyond their predecessors, right? Because they were able to get more sleep. They were able to hunt better. They were able to start fires to be able to cook their meat to absorb more nutrition. Like there's all these things that kind of dogs were able to do, like keep watch at night, help them hunt. That allowed for kind of the next level of evolution of human history. And I compared that to IoT devices because now in a much
And we've done
less.
it to our dogs too.
Yeah, with now even our dogs have IoT devices on them, right? But we can do things like set timers on things to turn off and on. We can talk to our house and say turn things off and on. We can talk to our house and say open shades or um, book travel tickets or order more something. Like there's all these things that we now no longer have to sit down and put thought to, that we can have IoT devices do. And so with that, of course, comes the added risk because Frank, one of your favorite lines actually is, every time somebody, buys a new device or turns on a new cell phone or whatever, the internet gets a little bit bigger.
It does.
Um,
It
and
does.
and this is the same kind of idea. They're just smaller devices, right? And with limited functionality. Limited functionality, by the way, doesn't mean that they can't be used as a traditional computer, though. Sure, they can't do like major calculations, and there's limitations to their computing power, but there's not limit. They have internet connectivity, which means they have this stack of capabilities that will allow them to communicate with other devices on your network, or other devices outside of your network, which is also a problem with IoT devices, right? We
100%.
talk about botnets and all kinds of other stuff I'm sure we're going to get into. Um, and so, where I see this absolutely great growth um, of possibly, aiding in that next step in human evolution with IoT devices and automations, and AI goes a little bit into that as well. There's also, of course, inherent risks that are brought along with
I
that.
like that you're bringing up, putting this in the phrase context of human evolution because I am really creeped out by body hacking, right? And you see that happening more frequently. And I know there's conventions where people are taking the time to go and they'll put in RFID chips in their fingers or they'll put magnets in their bodies and stuff like that. Is there a point where, yeah, okay, so we could argue, that's us self-evolving or something along those lines. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe. But do you think that there is a point at which the Internet of Things is going too far? Because I'm going to tell you, I don't want an IP address necessarily coming out of my body. But literally, as I say that, if I ever need a pacemaker, I'm going to want a pacemaker because if my body needs one to not die, I'll take it. And there are pacemakers there with IP addresses. Now, they've actually had to go back and pull out of people's bodies pacemakers that were put in because they were vulnerable to hacks and so
Yeah.
forth. So,
Right.
do you think there's a point though at which maybe there's too many IP addresses, or is there should there be? I know there's what is it, MDAT or whatever, the medical standards that are out there for connectivity of things, like the 5 people that care about that thing or follow it, right? Do you think there is a step too far that we're looking at when we're talking about that in the context of like a species growing?
I will say the first time I saw the biohacking village at DEF CON, I was ill prepared. I think at the time, if I would have had the cash on me,
Ill
I would have.
prepared is a good way of putting
Well,
that.
no, if I would have had the cash on me, I would have got an RFID chip put in my hand.
Really,
Yeah, and
they could
here's
do it to you there at DEF CON. You could be like, here, put in a chip in
yeah,
me,
you
please.
sign a waiver that says if
How
this
clean
gets in.
was that? I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
some dude at a conference shoving chips up in a body.
hey, if you think about a tattoo parlor, they're some of the most sanitary places on earth.
They're
They're
also some of the least
professionals.
sanitary places on earth,
I
depending on
would
the
hope.
parlor you go to.
I would hope that that a biohacking place would be also equally as sanitized. It looked very clean. It looked like a tattoo parlor. Actually,
So does the ear piercing place at Claire's. Whenever all those little girls are going to get their ears pierced, but that tween that tween that's getting their ear pierced, it has just as much qualifications as the teen that's doing it because they get $5 an hour piercing ears, and I'm sure they wash it. I'm sure it's fine.
everything's going to be okay.
This ear
They
piercer smells
sterilize
like
everything.
rainbows.
Yeah. Look, so I'm probably a little bit on that. I'm probably even some people are hearing that going, oh, like Dustin will get like an RFID chip and inserted under his skin in his hand. But let me break this down for you. So I bought a Tesla, and then we were a one car family for a very long time, and then we had a child, and so then I was like, okay, now we need a secondary car. So I bought a new car, and this new car has a key, and that has like I will walk out to my new car even now. I've had the car for almost a year, and I will try to open the door without a key because with my Tesla for 3 years, I was able to walk out and open my car without a key. I just have my phone on me. So having things, wearables, having things on my body that are just there that can make everything easier. I forgot my wallet. It's okay. I have an RFID chip that I program with my credit card. Boop, for tap or
Okay.
whatever. I know there are different protocols. Everybody, don't go too crazy on me, okay, in the comments. But like, I like that because again, with me, I've got so many other things that I'm thinking about throughout the day. I have been able to cognitively offload having to think about grabbing my keys, grabbing my wallet,
It is
grabbing all these
nice.
things,
It
right?
is nice. As
Yeah.
someone who doesn't need has phone as a key for theirs as well. It's pretty great.
Yes.
And it actually, though, when you talk about that cognitive offloading, my other car that I still have that requires a key, I have walked away leaving it completely on and unlocked, and that's been a problem more than once.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
double-edged
I've
sword
been
with that
guilty
one.
of that as well.
Yeah.
So, to go too far, yeah, absolutely. I think things like CRISPR, which again isn't necessarily a a technological hack. It kind of is, but where you're like actually kind of
Right.
doing wound therapy on yourself. Unless you're a biomedical person, with a degree, let's
Don't do
not do that.
self done CRISPR. Can you even
Yeah.
do self done CRISPR? Anyone
Uh,
who's out there and is doing CRISPR to themselves without doctors is both arguably wildly too rich, but too malinformed on their own capabilities.
I watched a documentary on people who do this. It does not seem like they are very rich,
What?
and it does seem like they are very ill-informed about what this stuff can
Are they
possibly
actually
do.
doing CRISPR to themselves, or is this
Yeah.
like some snake oil? Like, did a
No,
man in a cart on the side of the road be like, "Welcome, I'll
no, no, no,
CRISPR you"?
no. They are doing CRISPR on themselves. They're injecting
I'm
themselves.
so angry with you right now because now I know exactly what I'm going to spend too much time looking up later. I'm
So
going to
that
be
might
like,
be the for me, that might be the turning point. wherein, we see these devices getting smaller and smaller every day. It's only a matter of time until they get small enough to be injectable, right? Some
Yeah.
people out there actually believe that Bill Gates is doing this with the COVID-19 vaccine. Oh, there we go. Here's another
Yeah, now we're
there's
canceled
another way
again.
we get
I really
canceled.
appreciate
Um,
you really making sure that we have manageable expectations with subscribers with this.
yeah. Well, look, there are these beliefs that this technology is already out there now. That's just what they are, those beliefs, and we need to make sure that we're treating them as such, right?
Right.
That's what they are. Um, Once technology actually gets to those points, scientifically speaking, then maybe that might be a little too far. Where maybe I wouldn't exactly get nanobots injected into me. But at that point, I don't know. And that
So
might be like
weird though too. Like that one, not so weirded out about. But like self-made CRISPR, that's my line. This is going to be
like
so
you don't want to
subjective
get an
for everybody.
RFID chip inserted into your skin.
Well, also, okay, all cards on the table. I think the RFID chip being installed in a person, I think we've crossed that technology. We don't even need that anymore. Think about when you go to Whole Foods, right? You can go to Whole Foods now, and you can literally just put your palm
Yeah,
over a scanner, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's Frank. I'm gonna charge his account. There we go." Like that. I don't need the RFID chip anymore. I can just be like,
true.
wah 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 wah, and then
Very
I've
true.
I've paid for way. By the way, in that store, way overpaid for whatever I'm buying, kind of thing, right?
Right.
So I
So
think to
wait,
an extent, it's not needed.
yeah, but what like I'm curious as to your thoughts on this then. Like what is too far for you then? Because this sounds to me like you're willing to inject a bot that could possibly like a tiny bot that could possibly go in there and really screw up something
Yeah.
versus like an RFID chip where something might happen externally where you might have to get it
It,
removed,
I
but
think
that might
from
be the extent of it.
I think for me, it's more like if it could help my health, I'm on board, right? If it's a health thing, yes. But if it's a convenience thing, I need to think long and hard about it.
Okay.
Also, without going too deep in the backgrounds, for anyone who's listening to this from anywhere else in the world, during the 90s, here in the United States, a lot of people were really concerned about the end times. There are still a lot of them
I was
concerned
gonna
about the
say
end times.
the '90s.
Arguably, too many of them are concerned about the end times and maybe making them happen. Um, but there is the whole idea of the mark of the beast and all that stuff, and XYZ, and you're going to get a special tattoo. And back then, they're like, it's going to be an RFID or no, a barcode on your hand or on your head or something. Oh no, it's going to be a chip in your hand. Oh no, and all I can think now is, don't even need any of that. It's just your face. It's too late.
Yeah.
Everyone's fried. Everyone's done. So when I say that, like, I'm sure that tinges things. I don't, before the record, I do not believe any of this stuff, any of that. But I do, when you grow up for so long, it's something you think of. And honestly, I don't want to put a chip in me because I don't, unless I can find a compelling reason to have one installed, I do not want to put one in. And all the reasons I can think of, like doors, right? Opening door, and maybe my imagination just isn't expansive enough, right? But opening doors, I've got enough body parts and capabilities to do that myself. And if I want the door to recognize me, I've got Bluetooth, right, on my phone or something along those lines, or facial recognition or handprint recognition, thumbprint, stuff like that can get me in. There's alternative technologies that does not require me to insert stuff in my body. But if someone comes along, I think the Neuralink. And I'm saying Neuralink,
Yeah.
but I don't subscribe to any specific company. It's just the one that I see the most work with. Like, I like the idea of being able to think and things happen, and I think it's great for people who need it, as far as disabilities and so forth. I love
Sure.
that idea.
Yep.
But then again, same level, same area of discussion. You have these companies out there who are measuring brain waves, and they're mapping brain waves to certain capabilities. So then maybe I can just wear a neat hat. I don't have to actually put anything in me. Oh, bro, what if like the toupees of the future are bald dudes that like they're like, yeah, I lost my hair, but now I got this toupee that reads my mind, and I basically don't need a keyboard anymore.
Yeah.
That would be cool. That would
Yeah.
be cool. Now, is it worth me wanting to get rid of my hair? Not at
I
all.
was gonna say,
I
would you
like
shave your
having a
head for that?
natural head of hair. Yeah. So, but I'm just, what is it? Not threatcast. Maybe this is threatcasting, theorizing, portending. You're the futurist. I don't know what I just did there, but I
No,
probably
yeah.
told the
I mean,
future.
but look, like overall, we kind of went on a rabbit hole down from IoT into like biohacking
That's the type of
and
IoT. These things will have IP
yeah,
addresses.
it's
They
still a
still won't
thing
have
and it's
IP
still be
version
connected to the
6.
internet, right?
We'll
Yeah,
still be waiting for IP version 6.
that's right. Yeah, so yeah, maybe it'll eventually, but then a later upgrade. a firmware upgrade later. But yeah, we went down a rabbit hole, but for like these are the kinds of things that even for the household IoT things that we have now that you really should consider. Um, one of the things that we talked about is coffee pots that are on. And look, it doesn't seem like there's anything inherently wrong with that. If it's connected to the internet and you're on your way to work and you can hit make me a cup of coffee, and before you get there, it's brewing and ready to go. That's great. But also think about the elements that are in a coffee maker. The heating element, right? There's water, there's pumps, there's all kinds of things that are in there that can be, if you can exploit some kind of vulnerability and create something, you can possibly cause a fire. You can cause physical damage to something with these things. And even more
You
maybe
once
benign
had
thing.
a connected beer maker. You used to brew beer
I did.
online.
I used to
I
brew
remember this.
beer, and I hacked I did a man in the middle attack, and I hacked the beer maker to be able to, and I found all kinds of cool different functionalities that you could do in it. Like you could distill in like in different countries and different counties. Because in the United States, I think it's whether you can still your own liquor, it's different. Uh,
Oh, true.
county to
Wait, that
county.
beer machine could make liquor if you wanted to?
Apparently, there was like a whole function in there for distilling. Yeah,
I
so
don't know
I
how
didn't
that
know it could do
company
that.
ever went out of business, by the way. Never.
And so, but if on a more benign kind of level of these things that could possibly explode or cause something like that, you can think about server rooms that have HVACs that, are
100%.
connected to the internet. And if you wanted to do like a large scale denial of service attack on a server farm, you could just mess with the HVAC to go up to a certain temperature and fry everything in there, right? I mean, it can be as simple as that. We
Which
did
brings
have
me
a
to another point with that, because before I forget, it clearly now sounds like a great idea to turn those nuclear reactors back on to power those highly connected nuclear reactors back on to power the AIs.
That's
I'm sure
right.
there will be no problems with that whatsoever.
Repurposing 3 Mile Island. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. However, I will say that, we already have this, like, such, uh I think cat's out of the bag. We have this inherent trust in these devices, right? Um, we know that this, that everybody's using these, right? We know there are issues with everybody using them. We know there are security concerns. We know that, on a regular basis, people get scammed, hacked, phished, smished, QR code phished. I don't like using the word that terminology that goes with that one, but there's all kinds of different things so we already have this kind of like acceptance of the risk that goes along with these. And with this, whatever device you're watching us on now, I'm recording on a PC. Like we kind of just accept that. We're like, if someone's spying on me, ugh, like okay, like you're good for you, I
Have
guess.
fun and
Yeah,
enjoy the show. It's incredibly boring. I
yeah,
promise you. Outside of like the half hour every now and then I get to talk to Dustin, you can watch me being sad and crying.
yeah.
So
This isn't the Truman Show, right? There's nothing really interesting happening here. I'm not Jim Carrey.
that was the best
Um,
part of the Truman Show, right? The fact that they were able to actually make Truman's life interesting enough that people would tune in and watch it.
right. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
side
It's
note,
almost unbelievable.
yeah,
Um,
arguably.
but look, uh, so so with IoT devices, it's kind of that same thing. It's like, all right, it's kind of like the next step, and it doesn't seem like that much of a push, but it is. There are some dangers where your IoT devices usually have some kind of actuator on it, or maybe not actuator, but some kind of physical thing that's going to be changed in your world, based upon the packets that are flying back and forth on the
Yeah.
internet.
Why do you think it's been so difficult for them to come up with a consistent standard for these things? I keep reading about Matter, and I remember Z-Wave and Zigbee. I was a big Z-Wave guy simply because all the stuff I bought at first. I have those GE light switches that have Z-Wave and so forth. Why do you think there's such a problem, and why can't we get our act together to get any specific standards supported?
Yeah.
Because we
So,
got Wi-Fi sitting right there. Just as a side note, I know there's power requirements with Wi-Fi and all that, but you're seeing more of them come out.
yeah.
But I mean, what do you think it is?
I think you're going to have different industries that are going to, different organizations within industries that are going to try to claim and win the patent war, right? So we saw this with
Yeah.
Blu-ray, and I can't even remember the name of the other one. What was the other one?
It was
Blu-ray
HD
and
DVD. I had
yeah,
one. I plugged it into my Xbox. fun story there. I actually got that for signing on to a condo purchase in 2007 during the height of the housing crisis. And boy, just like HD DVD, the value of my home dropped. I'll tell you
Well, you got
what.
it for free, technically.
Technically,
Yeah.
technically, and I got 3 HD DVDs, one of which was Transformers, and
Yep.
it's still around here somewhere.
And
Oh gosh,
we
would
saw
have
a
been
similar
funny.
thing happen with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi too, where it was like
Yeah.
both of them stayed because both of them had their own merits, right? So there was some kind of interesting things that happened there. So that's part of it. The second part of that is that I do think that there are, when I was privileged enough to go to the ISO 27K meeting in Paris in 2019, there was a whole section on IoT devices, and so there were representatives from the United States, China, France, all the countries that kind of went in there, and they were debating about what things should be in the standards for those devices, specifically revolving around security. Of course, they all have the different interests, right? China has a lot of older devices and microchips that they're trying to get rid of, right? They're trying to repurpose or get rid of or whatever. So
Who'd have
they're
thought
like,
they overproduced? Not
yeah,
me.
yeah. So let's put those into these IoT devices, sell them, but they can only run Linux kernel version 2.6 on them. Okay, so let's in the next ISO meeting, let's try to like say that end of life Linux kernels are okay to have in these IoT devices. Or that it doesn't matter as much, or whatever it is, right? So there are interests that are there. And again, I'm not picking on China here. There's manufacturers in the United States that would do similar things, and manufacturers all around the world
I
that
don't
do
even think they
similar
can
things.
watch us in China, so it's okay.
I'm definitely not picking on the delegation from China that was there. But it is a concern that there are the manufacturers are kind of being taken into account more than anybody else because they have the money to lobby for this stuff. And of course, what ends up happening is that you're using an end of life Linux kernel. You're like, well, there's no admin access, and it's like you don't need it because there's so many exploits for that version of kernel that you just have to have. There's so many remote code executions that can happen if you have an open port, which a lot of these things do. Then guess what? Now all of a sudden you've got a device on a network somewhere deep inside some infrastructure that is highly exploitable, and highly remotely exploitable for you to be able to pivot, through a network.
Or as you and I learned the hard way about 10 years ago, they'll update Java halfway through, and then we've got an old version of Java that we need to use on something that we're building. And yeah, that fun times, fun
Yeah.
times.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
I like that you're talking about the potential impacts there, right? Specifically because what was it? I think it was 2017. There was a casino, and there was an exploitation of it, and the main ingress point, or at least part of it, really relied on the fish tanks. Do you remember that? Where they
Yes,
exploited the whole casino
I
through the
do.
fish tanks. And if there's one type of connected device I can very reasonably believe does not get enough support, coding support or update, it is fish tanks. Because you want to talk about something that, one, is a luxury good, but two, kind of gross, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not great. But the fact that you had so much of your network was connected to your fish tank, and that you put so many other things on there, I'm just kind of impressed. You can't even trust your fish. Your fish are going to get you at
Your
this
fish are
point,
hacking
and
you on a regular basis.
you know,
basis. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because then you have, but then you have legitimate. Okay, not that fish tanks are illegitimate, right? On legitimate cybersecurity, we like to err on the side of caution of legitimacy, right? And think more things are legitimate than not. But then you have other more well-known connected devices like those Ring cameras back in 2019, where they found an exploit and just started talking to little kids in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, my kids would lose their minds when all of a sudden, and I think they were even saying things like Santa's watching you, and are you nice or naughty? I would chuck those things out the window so fast. It's
That's
not
right.
even funny. I would not let my no thank you. So it's interesting how it's not just the niche cases, use cases that we hear about so often of said fish tanks. That you also have these exploitations that are happening through cameras that we trust on a regular basis that are owned by Amazon. Amazon's a legitimate company. Come on, come on,
Yeah.
Bezos, throw a few shekels to secure a few things. Just
That's
throwing that
right.
out there. Anyway,
So but to answer, there's this balance that's trying to that cheap IoT devices to the masses, and so there's this balance that manufacturers are trying to strike to make it as cheap as possible. And in order to do that, there's just a lot of older hardware out there with very little security review happening.
So then what do you think is going to keep these things more in line with the rest of technology? I mean, part of me wonders if it's going to be like privacy, right? Because you have the privacy standards that are out there that are required. There has to be a level of privacy. And privacy, whether you like GDPR or anything like that, privacy requires a level of security as well. There was the Roombas back in 2022 where a woman noticed her Roomba was scanning her while she was on the toilet, right? Now, okay, I wouldn't know how to react in this situation, but then she actually complained to Roomba and did a follow up, and they said, "quote This is all just part of our AI training for Roomba." And I got to tell you, I don't know if I want my nudity being something that's training a robot. I'm just going
No.
to put that out there. We should have those types of options because, okay, cool. I'm glad your robot knows not to run into my naked body while on the toilet, I guess. However, is it necessary? I don't know. And who's going to get that if there's an exploitation? Also, if anyone exploited that and stole that data of me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm trying. I try to take care of myself, but there are a few things that you may not like to see. So like it reminds me, do you think it is that then the privacy requirements that might come to save the day a bit in this?
That's probably part of it. And look, one of the best privacy laws that we have in the United States is probably HIPAA. Um, when it
Wow.
comes to anything, yeah, no, that's
Who
weird
would
to
have
think about,
thought?
right?
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe
It's
the
like the
lowest
lowest
of the
bar
protection.
possible, but at least we have it.
Yeah, the for federal level protections, HIPAA is probably where it's at, and they have both a security rule and a privacy rule. But it's really made to protect privacy, both of them. The security rule is made to protect the privacy. The privacy rule is made to also protect the privacy of data. But we are talking about the confidentiality part of the CIA triad here, right? That's really what's important. And so, even for IoT devices, medical IoT devices, the FDA is pushing out some, pretty stringent rules on how those penetration tests. You have first of all, you have to have a penetration test on it. Then you have to. Then there's a very strict rules on how that penetration test is supposed to be performed, and to like the technical level of what how it's supposed to be performed. So it's not just we scanned it and we couldn't see any open ports. So it's like no, no, no. You almost got to do like a breakdown of these things in order to find out what's going on with them. So
Agreed.
I think from there, then we're going to have look. There's always going to be the people who are going to be like, I just want my lights to turn off and on. I don't care if somebody hacks in and then can turn my lights off and on.
I'd
And
actually like it if they did it consistently for me because right now I got these IKEA blinds and I'm so tired of coming downstairs in the morning and I have half the blinds up and maybe two other blinds that are halfway up. And I'm like, why did you stop halfway through? What's going on? I don't know.
so this goes into right back into cheap consumer products, right? So I think the cheap consumer products will always be there. And we see that with cell phones still, or smartphones, or phones, or whatever you want to call them, whatever generation you're a part of, it depends on what you call them, right? But there are some old Android phones out there that still get people on the internet, still get them so they can watch their YouTube videos, still get them so they can text people, and
I'm
that's all they
keeping
care
my
about. Is
droid. I'm keeping my droid. I don't care if it belongs in a museum. I love it.
yeah,
It's beautiful.
there you go. And it was an amazing machine for the
It was.
time, right?
It still boots up. It still connects. So,
Yep.
I mean, it
Um,
doesn't do much, but
yeah. And so from that perspective, Frank, like I guess uh, from I guess it's like okay, um, the privacy is going to be, is this going to be like a service? Is this going to be like a concierge white glove thing where like if you
privacy
want to
as a
buy the most
service.
private IoT devices you can,
Oh no.
then this was going to cost
No.
you an extra 50 dollars
No,
per device.
because
What do you
then they're
think?
not. Maybe. Okay. Okay then. Putting this out there as an argument, maybe Apple's right then. Maybe Apple's worth the extra price. I'm not saying Apple's the right. I'm saying this for the sake of argument. I am not one of those people who cares one lick about Android versus Apple. I've got both in this house, and they're fine, right? But one thing I noticed that I feel there's more of a focus on. Oh, I can feel the arguments now with privacy and security are the Apple devices. Now, there are the arguments there. Well, people just don't go after Apple as much because it's such a low count, right? So such the user base is so much lower. Fair, But then also maybe that's security through obscurity. Maybe I don't know, but it is
Security through
a
a
company
very
that I've
well
felt more
controlled
secure with.
ecosystem, right? Like
Yeah.
that's Apple's thing. Yeah. And
Anyway,
so, yeah. So so that's it. That's the luxury, you know, version that we're kind of seeing. However, I will say that um, Apple users still use TikTok. You know, still use some of
sure
these
do. They sure
use
do.
some of the more, you know, I don't want to say nefarious, but more questionable privacy Apple apps that are out there. Like Facebook is still pretty big on those devices. So that comes the other issue is like, will Apple ever lock any of that out? And the answer is absolutely not. You know, they're not going to go. We've already seen it. They're not going to go against China. They're not going to go against you know, whatever's popular. They're not going to go against Meta. Um, so it's this kind of, you know, interesting balance that they've struck, where they're like, okay, we're going to allow our programmers to have access to a certain amount of the device, but not all of it. And then we're going to, you know, still, you know, they're still going to do some security review on things, but they don't really have to worry about it too much because of kind of how they've implemented things. So you're right. That's it. You're absolutely right. That's like the
Per
luxury.
usual. Thank you, Dustin. I'm just glad you like to say it out loud. It's nice to hear.
No, that you're right. Oh,
Yeah,
I think
I'm
you hear
kidding.
that
I'm
from me at
kidding.
least
I'm
once a
kidding.
week, if not more.
Oh,
Um, so, but like, okay, so in your opinion, then is so Android then would be
no, 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 no. Nice try. I'm gonna
no, no,
stop
no.
you
Go
right
ahead,
there. I'm gonna stop you
continue.
right there because I love Android. I've got my Shield TV. I love it, and I am confident it doesn't have the most current version of Android, but it is still fantastic. I've still got my books, bro, and that thing is definitely a bad fork at this point.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure the new books options are very up to date, but the level of support, I think the last update they pushed out was in 2022 on mine. So I'm not stopping though because I got to read them books in the summertime with the non-glare e-reader screen.
all the hackers
Anyway,
listening to you right now are making a note. They're like, okay, Frank is
yeah,
Apple
have
book.
fun, enjoy.
Uh,
It's you know you're going to be so disappointed. Um, Anyway, well, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate you taking the time. And if anyone has any comment, any thoughts as well, tell us. What do you think? What kind of IoT devices do you use? Do you feel they're secure? Tell us in the comments. It's been really fun. We've enjoyed a lot of the comments that you guys have been putting out there. As a reminder, we're still in the running. We've been nominated for the podcast awards this year. You'll see that in the show notes as well. Please vote for us. There's not much time left, but we really appreciate the thoughtfulness of it. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more of our discussions. Anyway, thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you at the next episode. Have a good week.